Love in the Fast Lane, Chapter 3. The acrid smell of burning coolant hit Sam's nostrils before she even saw the first wisp of steam curling from beneath Stella's hood. Her stomach dropped as the temperature gauge swung violently into the red zone, the needle pegged to the far edge of the dial. Damn it! She slammed her palm against the leather-wrapped steering wheel, the impact sending a sharp sting up her arm. The engine's smooth purr transformed into a labored wheeze as more steam billowed out, obscuring her view of the road ahead. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she frantically checked her mirrors, searching for a gap in the relentless stream of Saturday afternoon traffic. "Stella, why did you have to do this today?" The bitter taste of disappointment filled her mouth as she guided her beloved Audi toward the shoulder, gravel crunching beneath the tires. The car shuddered and groaned in protest, steam now pouring from the hood vents in thick, angry clouds that smelled of antifreeze and impending repair bills. Even after Sam killed the engine with trembling fingers, the hissing continued, a death rattle that made her chest tighten with frustration. The sudden silence after the engine died felt oppressive, broken only by the whoosh of passing traffic that made the whole car rock in their wake. Sam sat there for a moment, her hands still gripping the wheel, knuckles white with tension. The leather felt slick beneath her palms, damp with nervous sweat. When water pumps failed, there was usually no warning, a fact that made her stomach churn with a mixture of anger and helplessness. 1 minute, you're golden, cruising along with the windows down and music playing, and the next, you're sitting on the side of the road with your head in your hands, mentally calculating repair costs while your carefully planned day crumbles around you. Sam wasn't oblivious to car care, quite the opposite. The calluses on her hands from countless hours spent with wrenches and screwdrivers were a testament to her dedication. In fact, she had developed more than a small talent for automotive maintenance over the years, her fingernails perpetually stained with traces of motor oil no amount of scrubbing could completely remove. She performed most of the maintenance work herself, taking pride in every perfectly torqued bolt and meticulously checked fluid level, because she raced in autocross at least once a month, where mechanical failure wasn't just inconvenient, it was humiliating. The major repairs, the ones requiring specialized tools and diagnostic equipment she couldn't justify buying, she left to her friend Kevin and his Audi and Volkswagen specialty shop. A shop that was currently 140 miles east and her might as well have been on the moon for all the good it would do her now. The heat radiating through the windshield made her skin prickle with sweat as she gathered her courage. After a quick glance in the side mirror to check for approaching traffic, 18-wheelers that thundered past close enough to make her car shake, she pulled the hood release with a hollow pop and slid from behind the wheel. The asphalt beneath her feet radiated heat through the thin soles of her Birkenstocks, the soft black surface and slightly sticky from the afternoon sun. Keeping one eye on the interstate traffic flying by at 70-plus miles per hour, close enough that she could feel the displaced air tugging at her clothes, she maneuvered carefully to the front of the car. The steam rose in an accusatory column, carrying with it the sweet, cloying smell of coolant that made her nose wrinkle. She stood there, staring at the Faber and willing it to stop through sheer force of will, her hands clenched at her sides. The warm April sun beat down mercilessly on her shoulders, its rays reflecting off Stella's chrome trim with a brightness that made her squint. The metal looked almost liquid in the harsh light, reminding her with cruel clarity that she had places to go, things to buy, and a broken-down car that wasn't going to help with any of it. Sweat began to trickle down her spine, making her tank top stick uncomfortably to her skin. Her trip to Charlotte was only supposed to be a simple day trip. A few hours at IKEA browsing through Swedish furniture for her new townhouse. Maybe stopping at that little Thai place she loved downtown. The kind of uncomplicated Saturday that she looked forward to all week. And it was Saturday afternoon of Easter weekend, which meant her timing couldn't have been worse. Most part stores would be closed, their employees home preparing for Sunday dinners and egg hunts, leaving her stranded in Charlotte until Monday at the earliest.
completely at the mercy of whatever roadside assistance could eventually get to her. Or, and this thought made her grimace, she would have to call her brother Doug to come out and help. She could already hear his voice, that mixture of concern and mild exasperation he reserved for her automotive adventures. He'd come, of course, but it meant she'd be stuck sitting on this blazing shoulder for at least 3 hours while he drove from Raleigh, probably listening to him lecture her about buying a more reliable car the entire way back. Neither option thrilled her. Her jaw clenched as she weighed her limited choices. She sighed deeply, the hot air filling her lungs like breathing in an oven, and wrapped the bottom of her t-shirt around her right hand. The fabric was already damped with perspiration, but it would have to do. She leaned in cautiously to lift the hood and survey the damage, hoping against hope that it might be something simple, something fixable. I wouldn't do that if I were you. The deep no voice came from nowhere, rich and unexpected like thunder on a clear day. Sam's heart leapt into her throat as she stumbled backwards, her sandals skidding on loose gravel. In the process, her feet tangled together in a graceless dance, and she came crashing down hard on her tailbone. The impact sent lightning bolts of paint shooting up her spine, and tiny rocks bit into her palms as she tried to catch herself. "Easy there. Are you okay?" Her face burned with embarrassment as she lay there for a moment, processing what had happened. The gravel dug into her skin through her thin shorts, and she could feel the beginning of what would undoubtedly be an impressive bruise. She lifted her eyes toward the source of that smooth baritone brushing gravel from her stinging palms, and her breath caught in her throat. Holy shit, Sam thought, her mind going momentarily blank. She knew that face. Everyone who'd ever watched a car race knew that face. The jet black hair streaked at the temples with distinguished silver, those hazel eyes that held mischief as well as an iron will, and the fit body that was now encased in worn denim and a crisp blue shirt that emphasized his naturally olive skin. Trey fucking Stockton was standing on the side of the road looking at me with barely concealed amusement. His looks were as famous as his talent, gracing magazine covers and billboard advertisements across the country. Which begged the question, why was it professional stock car driver standing on the side of the road like an ordinary good Samaritan, telling me not to touch my car? Her mind raced, trying to make sense of this surreal situation. Pulling herself together, mentally, dusted the road grime off the back of her shorts with shaking hands. The fabric was torn slightly on where I'd landed, and I could feel the beginning of what would undoubtedly be an impressive bruise. She met his amused gaze with as much composure as she could muster, disappointed despite herself when she didn't see his trademarked crooked grin, the one that had charmed countless Victory Lane interviews. "I was only going to open the hood," she said, suddenly nervous under his scrutiny. Her voice came out higher than she intended, and she jammed her hands into her pockets to hide their trembling. Without asking permission or even acknowledging her words, he strode over to the front of Stella's hood with the confident gait of someone used to taking charge. His fingers tapped the metal surface experimentally, testing the heat for himself. She watched the careful way he assessed the temperature, like he was reading the telemetry on one of his race cars. "I had my shirt wrapped around my hand," Sam added to his back, feeling defensive of her automotive knowledge.
He ignored her protests as he bent and located the hood release, his movements fluid and economical. Before she could voice another objection, he had the hood open and another massive cloud of steam rolled out, the sweet smell of coolant even stronger now. "Look, I don't want to hold you up from where you need to go." The words tumbled out of her mouth before she could stop them, driven by a combination of embarrassment and genuine concern. "I know your time is valuable, and it's probably far more important for you to be wherever you're headed than to help me." At that comment, he turned slowly, deliberately. He slid his expensive sunglasses down the bridge of his nose with one finger, and his narrow eyes met hers with laser focus that made her feel pinned in place. A chill shot down her spine despite the oppressive heat, followed immediately by an unnecessary and entirely unwelcome jolt of warmth that pooled low in her belly. Anyone waiting for me can continue to wait. His voice carried an edge. Don't make assumptions about what is important to me. Sufficiently chastised, Sam felt her cheeks burn even hotter. She could feel the blush spreading down her neck. But even through her embarrassment, curiosity gnawed at her. Why did you pull over to help? He readjusted his sunglasses, sliding them back into place before turning back to her engine, his broad shoulders lifted in a casual shrug. Your driving got my attention. I felt sorry for you when I saw you have trouble. Sam's mind raced as she replayed the last 5 miles of her trip on the crowded freeway, searching her memory for any traffic infractions or stupid moves. She drove fast. She knew that. But also, in her opinion, safely. Yes, she sometimes wove between the slower cars, threading the needle when opportunities presented themselves, but she always used her turn signal and tried never to make a pass too close. The fact that he, Trey Stockton, a man who drove 200 miles per hour for a living, had watched her and been impressed enough to notice was high praise indeed. I'm nearly positive it's the water pump, Sam stated quickly, trying to redirect the conversation to more mechanical ground. Stella gave me no indication anything was wrong prior to the temperature shooting up and the steam appearing. He nodded absently, still perusing the engine compartment with the practiced eye of someone who understood machines intimately. His fingers traced the radiator hoses, checking for damage. Stella? You've never named a car before? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Mentally, Sam slammed her hand over her mouth, mortified at the familiarity in her tone. She blushed even deeper and towed nervously at a loose rock on the berm, the gravel crunching beneath her sandal. Sure, but I would have expected her name to be something else. He glanced back at her, his expression unreadable behind the sunglasses. Something more modest, like you. Sam didn't know whether to take his comment as a compliment or a slam. The ambiguity of it made her stomach flutter with uncertain butterflies. Absently tugging at her ponytail, suddenly hyper-aware of her ancient tank top with its faded logo, she tried hard to stay neutral while her stomach performed gymnastics. It's a sports car with functionality, feminine with a practical side. The words came out in a rush, and she couldn't help adding mentally, kinda like me, I hope. He got it. After a moment of consideration, he stood up, his full height making her feel small, despite her average stature, and pulled a cell phone from the front pocket of his perfectly fitted jeans. The movement drew her attention to the way the denim hugged his hips, and Sam couldn't help but be momentarily spellbound by the sight. All your coolant is gone, and there's a good bit sprayed on the engine. You're probably right about the water pump. Is your mechanic nearby? When she looked up from her inappropriate staring, she finally got the crooked grin she'd been waiting for, the one that graced Victory Lane celebrations and magazine covers. Busted, completely busted, staring at his physique. No, I live in Raleigh. Her voice came out breathless, and she cleared her throat before continuing. I was actually headed to Charlotte to do some shopping. He nodded thoughtfully and lifted his phone to his ear. It wasn't long before whoever he was calling answered. Apparently, Trey Stockton's calls didn't go to voicemail. Hey, can you send the flatbed? No, it's not for me. His eyes flickered to her during the pause, something unreadable in his expression, before turning his attention to scan the highway for landmarks. I'm on 85 going toward downtown, 2 exits past the shop. You'll see my truck and a silver Audi hatchback. Thanks. Sam stood in absolute awe as her mind struggled to process what had just happened.
She hadn't asked for his help, hadn't even hinted at needing it, yet he just arranged for her car to be towed without hesitation. "I have roadside," she stammered. There was something about his cool, unaffected demeanor, contrasted with her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird, that had her completely thrown off balance. This wasn't how her Saturday was supposed to go. "Yeah, but I have a shop and a garage full of mechanics at my disposal." He pocketed his phone with casual efficiency. "Might as well use it for good." There was that crooked grin again, partially hidden behind a curtain of silver and black 5 o'clock shadow that only added to his rugged appeal. It was the grin that caused thousands of women to swoon at racetracks across the country, including herself, though she'd only ever admitted that in the privacy of her own thoughts. "Besides, you said yourself you're not from around here. Where would you take Stella on a Saturday before Easter when most shops that can handle the repair are closed?" She had him there. Stella got only the best treatment, only from people Sam trusted with absolute certainty. Her car was her baby, her pride and joy, her competitive edge. And while she didn't know him personally, had only watched him race on television and read about him in magazines, she trusted his resources, considering his profession demands the best. Taking a deep, calming breath that did nothing to slow her racing pulse, Sam smiled for the first time since her car had started steaming. Good Lord, that smile packed a punch. He felt straight to his groin. Trey Stockton hadn't lied when he said it was her driving that got his attention. She'd passed him, doing at least 85, handling her car with a precision that spoke of real skill. But it was her attitude that had him pulling over when he saw the first puff of steam come from beneath her hood. She was singing enthusiastically and drumming the steering wheel as she passed him, completely lost in her music, with wisps of her chestnut hair flying wildly around her face from the open windows and sunroof. Trey couldn't remember the last time he had seen someone so genuinely, unconsciously happy. When he had gotten up close, he found her not model gorgeous, not the artificial beauty he was used to in his world, but certainly beautiful in an understated, authentic way that made his chest tighten unexpectedly. Her pale green eyes, full lower lip that she kept biting nervously, and freckled face were completely devoid of makeup but glowing from her exposure to the spring sun and what seemed to be a naturally radiant personality. Her body was a series of curves and soft edges that were perfectly, naturally proportioned, currently covered with a dark purple tank top that had seen better days and a pair of khaki cargo shorts that sat low on her hips. Tan Birkenstocks that had molded to her feet showed off purple toenails that matched her shirt. Trey swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry, and willed himself to act coolly, even as his pulse quickened. There had been a flicker of recognition from her, that widening of the eyes, the slight intake of breath that he knew so well. She knew exactly who he was. But after that moment, and his searing rebuke that he immediately wished he could have softened, she treated him as if he were any other good Samaritan who'd stopped to help. No gushing, and no requests for selfies, no breathless admiration. He almost wished she had gushed just a little. It would have been more familiar, easier to handle than this genuine, unaffected woman, who extended his hand formally while they waited for his crew chief to send a wrecker from his race shop to their location. "I met your car, but not you. I'm Trey Stockton."
Sam, Samantha Kirby. Her grip was firm and businesslike, her palm slightly rough with calluses that surprised him. Still, the contact sent a jolt through him as if he'd touched a live wire, electricity racing up his arm and spreading through his chest. He was pretty sure she felt it as well, considering how her eyes flew from his to our joined hands when it happened, green eyes widening with surprise. "Which do you prefer?" Trey asked, not wanting to be the first to let go, curious about this woman who worked on her own car and drove like she meant it. Sam seemed genuinely startled by his question, as if no one had ever bothered to ask her preference before. "It doesn't matter. I answer to both." She slipped her hand from his, the loss of contact unexpectedly disappointing, and shoved it violently into her pocket like she was trying to hide the evidence of their touch. He didn't know if she was simply shy or if she really believed her preferences didn't matter to anyone. Either way, her casual dismissal of her own importance annoyed him more than it should have. "I didn't ask which one you answered to. I asked which you preferred. Pick one, Sam or Samantha." He loved how her spine stiffened at his statement, her shoulders squaring as her eyes met his with a flash of fire that transformed her whole face. Then he saw her swallow, the delicate movement of her throat drawing his attention downward to her collarbone visible above the neckline of her tank top. He felt awareness flood over him, hot and unexpected. There was something seriously sparking between them, something that made the air feel charged despite the highway fumes and heat. Trey suddenly wanted to know if her lower lip tasted like the cinnamon candy it reminded him of, wanted to know if her hair smelled as good as it looked flying in the wind. "Samantha, please." She paused, visibly collecting herself. "I should call Kevin, my mechanic, and tell him what happened. He just swapped out the water pump 6 months ago, and if it's a bad part, he'll want to know." Trey nodded, trying to focus on her words rather than the way the afternoon sun brought out golden highlights in her chestnut hair. He smiled inwardly at her nervousness, the way she kept shifting her weight from foot to foot. He couldn't say he wasn't a bit thrown off as well. This wasn't how he'd expected his day to go. But as a professional race car driver, he knew how to bank his emotions, how to compartmentalize even when he didn't want to. "Go ahead. I'll keep a lookout for the wrecker." Samantha flattened her hand against one of her pockets, patting searchingly for her phone. When she came up empty, she started toward the passenger door of the car, and a whiff of honeysuckle hit his nose, cutting through the harsh smells of hot asphalt and coolant. It was intoxicating, natural, nothing like the expensive perfumes he was used to. Looking round the hood, he caught a glimpse of her perfectly sculpted rear as she leaned into the car, and he forced himself to focus on her face when she emerged with her phone. "Just out of curiosity, what were you listening to?" She stopped mid-motion, her hand extended on the door handle. "Listening to what?" "On the radio, just before you broke down." She blushed again, the color spreading from her cheeks down to her chest. Adorable, yet maddening. "I was singing and acting like a fool, wasn't I?" She had been happy, genuinely, unself-consciously happy, in a way that had drawn him like a moth to flame. "What was it?" "Taylor Swift, We're Never Getting Back Together." She quickly turned away to retrieve her phone before he could smile at her again, but he caught the embarrassed curve of her lips. As Samantha busied herself collecting her personal items from the car and calling her mechanic, Trey kept one eye on the Charlotte-bound traffic passing in a continuous stream and perused Stella more carefully. She was a late-model Audi. The 4 rings on the grille had given it away immediately. Growing up, everyone would have called it a station wagon, but thanks to a trio of car enthusiasts from England and decades of evolution, they were now called hot hatches. From outward appearances, the car looked stock. No gaudy body kit, no oversized wheels, no ridiculous wing. But he'd had seen the modifications under the hood and knew better. The 4-cylinder turbo had been properly massaged for serious fun, and he would bet his truck that the suspension had received similar attention. This was a thinking person's performance car. He walked slowly down the driver's side of the car, noting the quality of the window tint, the subtle lip spoiler that looked functional. Through the window, he spotted a 6-speed manual transmission nestled between black leather and brushed aluminum trim. The interior was clean but lived in. A coffee cup in the holder, sunglasses on the dash, what looked like timing sheets from an autocross event tucked into the door pocket.
sexy yet practical. Somehow he knew that Stella was a complete reflection of Samantha's personality, right down to the vanity plate that read HRICN Sam. He couldn't help but laugh out loud when he read it, wondering how she'd gotten that nickname. Hurricane Sam. It suited her somehow, this woman who drove with passion and precision, who worked on her own car, who sang Springsteen at the top of her lungs. Pulling over to be the good guy was turning out to be the smartest decision he'd made in months, maybe years. She was finishing her phone call when the wrecker swung smoothly in front of them, the driver expertly maneuvering the large truck despite the traffic. Sam couldn't help but feel a complex mixture of embarrassment and something that felt dangerously close to starstruck. Trey Stockton, professional race car driver and NASCAR champion, had stopped to help her. Not only did she know who he was her favorite driver, despite a well-deserved hot-headed reputation that she typically disliked in others of his profession. She had followed his career from when he raced Indy cars through his transition to stock cars, admiring his raw talent and the way he'd made the most of every opportunity presented to him. She had watched him develop from a young hotshot into a seasoned champion, celebrating his wins from her couch and defending him on online forums when people criticized his aggressive driving style. It didn't help that, in Sam's opinion, he was one of the finest-looking men on the planet, a fact he probably knew but somehow managed not to be completely obnoxious about. And he knew when to take himself too seriously, a quality she had noticed in his interviews that made him seem more human than hero. As she watched, as a young man named Steve expertly loaded Stella onto the back of a flatbed tow truck, emblazoned with Trey Stockton Racing in bold letters on the doors, her thoughts about her knight in shining sheet metal were interrupted. "We'll take my truck. Steve will take your car back to the shop." Trey motioned toward the gleaming black Chevrolet Silverado parked a few yards behind Stella, its chrome gleaming in the afternoon sun. Sam followed him to the passenger door that he opened for her, an unexpectedly old-fashioned gesture that made her stomach flutter. The interior smelled of leather and his cologne, something subtle and expensive. She settled into the seat, the leather cool against her overheated skin, and he closed the door with a solid thunk before sliding in the driver's side. He cranked over the engine and the sound system erupted with Eric Church at a volume that made her jump, the bass rattling her chest. "Sorry," he muttered, quickly dropping the volume to a more comfortable level, with controls on the steering wheel. Sam smiled, her ears still ringing slightly. "I like your leafy voice, but for me, that volume is reserved for competing with open windows and road noise." He maneuvered the behemoth of a pickup around Stella and the tow truck with surprising grace, then absolutely pinned her back in the seat with horsepower and torque when he accelerated to merge with highway traffic. The engine roared, and she could feel the power through the seat, controlled violence that reminded him this man was used to much faster machines. "Do you have a change of clothes with you?" "No," I sighed, reality crashing back in. I hadn't planned on staying in Charlotte. It was supposed to be a day trip, long enough for me to buy a few things at IKEA, visit my favorite dinner spot, and then go home. She thought about her empty apartment, the furniture she had planned to buy, the quiet evening she had anticipated. "What I have is what you see." She motioned at her purple purse he placed on the console between them, suddenly self-conscious about its worn edges and the keychain hanging from it. "Are you meeting someone for dinner?" His tone was carefully casual, but she caught something else underneath. Interest, maybe. "No, I don't know anyone here. I just come for the shopping and to eat at a restaurant downtown that I love." So a change of plans for the evening is not a big deal. The question caught her completely off guard, making her pulse skip. She had no idea why he cared about her evening plans. All she was concerned about was getting back to his shop so she could keep an eye on Stella and possibly find a hotel within a walking distance that wouldn't destroy her budget. Then she'd call her brother and let him know what was going on and endure his gentle lecture about her cart choices. "No," she said slowly, studying his profile as he navigated traffic.
I think my plans have been changed, whether I wanted them to be or not.